My first of my past travel series, and I'll be honest, also Norway, it seemed like the edge of the world. Good place to start. This is the reason why we come to Norway to hike and have these views. Just make sure you watch your step.
What could go wrong on a trip to Norway and Scandinavia, some of the most advanced countries in the world? I tell you what could go wrong. You leave technology behind. That is, you forget your phone in a country where everything's done digitally. That's what happened to me. Easy mistake, but what I found is we are so dependent on our technology. I couldn't contact my friend who I was meeting over there. I could not actually get into my Google accounts for the hotel's reservations. It caused a lot of headache. Thankfully, I have good friends that were able to help me on this side because I had to get back into my phone so I could verify to get back into my Google account to get my reservations. Bottom line, it taught me redundancy is important. So after spending my first couple days in Stockholm and also visiting this country of Latvia to sort out all my communication issues, finally got that working and it was time to fly to Tromsø in Northern Norway. This is going to be one of my dream trips, one of those you see a YouTube video and you're like, oh, I got to do it. So it was my turn. So I arrived actually in the mid-afternoon and it was time to get the rental car, get provisions, and then make the sprint to get the ferries. Because the ferries in Northern Norway are the real logistical hurdle. I arrived an hour and a half before my ferry was to leave. I was the last car was able to get on. The line was backed up that far. That was for the middle of September. High point in summertime, it could be even worse. You miss a ferry, you're gonna lose 2-3 hours. In my case, that would have been a hike that I would have loved to have done. And that hike was this beauty, Segla, on the island of Senja in Northern Norway. On the way up, I had doubts how great it was gonna be because it was already in the shade. It was getting that late in the day, but as soon as I crested the line and had the sun on the mountain, wow, this beauty, you just can't beat it. And I tell you what, I could have spent hours up there. Unfortunately, I still had miles to drive.
Yeah, magical is a good word for this place. And it was during that drive when I realized how long the golden hour actually lasts above the Arctic Circle. And those sunsets, I tell you what, let me believe this trip was going to be magical. And the next morning, I was drinking my coffee. I looked at the sky, scanned the mountains, and I said, yes, magical is definitely a good word for it. The actual mountain I went up that day was Husfjellet. It was a little bit of a grind. You had to go through some bogs. You had some kind of boring stretches, but once you got on top, you had views on both sides. It definitely was a playground. I basically checked out the beaches, checked out the peaks, and when I was done, it was time to come back down and find some food. And as I looked for that food, I saw some great views, and you know what? Even the meal itself was pretty good, even though it was pricey. Next morning, it was a long transit day. There was a couple of nice scenic stops along the way. I'll show you some pictures in a moment. But I decided to avoid the ferry crossing, so I kind of had a long drive through the woods, but still you had views all the way. Absolutely beautiful area, and I ended up in Solvar on the Lofoten Island. Now, Senja Island, that was the warm-up act. The Lofotens, that was the main show that I was here for. And it did not disappoint. The word I'd use to describe them was stunning. The first stop I had actually was Devil's Gate Hike. And I'll admit, getting up on that rock, when I stood up on top, I was like, whoa, this is a little bit shaky. Then I decided to go explore around the town of Solvaljetta. Hopefully my Norwegian friends will correct my pronunciation if I got it wrong. No matter how awesome the trip was so far, the next day that I was going to be traveling, I was going to actually stop and see the point that brought me to Lofotens. It was a screensaver from Microsoft, and I said, I gotta go there. Let's see if you recognize it. The city is actually Henningsvar, and the hike is up Vestfoten, and the views were stunning, but I'm going to be honest with you, this hike, it was difficult. There was a lot of loose kind of scree where you're 2 feet up, 1 foot down. Because it was windy that day, and when you got to that top, I'll be honest, when I was scanning the view, I thought one good gust could have blown me off, and it would have been a world of hurt. But was it worth it? Yeah, it was, definitely. And then it was down the road to Egham to check out the sculpture with the head that rotates, some nice beaches. Talking about the beaches, I tell you what, I went to Mannen to do the hike, got rained out, and looked down and said, you know what, I think that beach is good for an Arctic plunge. check that box. It was awesome. Then it was down the road, definitely rainy day, but the next morning it was sunny and bright. And guess what? We had a bonus. Killer whales. It was pretty awesome. Crossing the road, we had a bridge and people were taking pictures. What are you taking pictures of? Looked down and I said, that was totally awesome. A pot of orcas. And after orcas, it was on to a Kvalvika or Ryten. Basically, it was like a stroll up a big hill. For the most part, there's a couple steep parts, but they had views all around. Definitely walking the trail step by step. And then it's just on top, taking a look in the distance and the beaches. I wish I had more time to go up and down some of them. I basically stayed on the main plateau, took a look around, and took in a lot of the pictures. Just enjoy that view. And on the way down, I definitely did a couple detours just because I was like, where's this trail go? And tried to pose where I could. But overall, extremely enjoyable day. Then it was basically the next day, headed down the peninsula. Basically, we were going to do Reinebringen and then take the ferry across to Bodo. And Bodo is where it's been tonight. But I tell you what, the hike Reinebringen, that was a lot of stairs. Actually, not technical at all, but it definitely had effort. When you got up there, that view, oh my God, absolutely worth it. Felt very blessed that I had such good weather to have those views. And then checked out the little town of A before we had a long wait for a ferry. And that ferry was nighttime. The oceans were rocking, but I kept my food down and had a good night's sleep. And the next day, basically, it was a long transit day, but that long transit day had one awesome hike. And we're going to talk about that hike in more detail because it was kind of unexpected, definitely in a more remote area and didn't have the dramatic scenery of the Lofoten Islands or Senja, but it had that fall weather, and I tell you what, it's definitely worth it. And the day ended in Narvik, and then we went on to Tromsø. Now that great hike, the hardest part about it, I think it's the name, it's a Litlverivassforsen. Yeah, I know I got that wrong, but I tell you what, it didn't take away from the joy of the hike. There's a lot of bogs that you had to walk through. One time I was actually almost all the way above my knee in mud, but you got to the end, you had that waterfall. That was definitely so worth it. Basically standing just majestic in that kind of misty weather all by myself. My friend couldn't make it through a scramble area, so basically they were waiting for me. And after that, it was basically onto the ferries and then heading up the road, catching a waterfall, and then the city of Tromsø. And just like that, the hiking portion of the trip was over, but I had a couple urban stops. I was going to make my first visit to Oslo, and I absolutely enjoyed the city. Just kind of made a day trip of it, walking around, checking all the sites, the monks and museums. But I also found that the statues around town were kind of cool, and as far as food, the prices were so high that I had a hot dog, and it was good. And then it was on to Denmark and explored some of the little towns, and the big castle, Frederiksborg, which was awesome. And then it was the mandatory stops kind of around the Copenhagen area, and at that point at Christiansand, I ended the trip.
So what lesson did I learn from this trip? It was always take your phone and make sure you have your backup phone with you. And we'll see you in the next video, and come along with the journey with me.